Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Do I have a thumbs up? Can everyone hear me? Fantastic. Listen, welcome to Vibe Coding for Cisco Splunk, presented by Chris Day, Principal Consultant, Data 3. If it doesn't look like me, it's because I am not Chris Day. My name is Graham Robinson, Chief Technology Officer at Data 3. So my role here today is really to firstly tell you what you're about to see is 20 minutes of what I think is going to be the best presentation at Cisco Live. You're going to walk away from here going, I don't believe what I just saw. And it's not about how to configure Cisco, it's about how to think differently about building services and actually delivering outcomes for your own organizations. From a Data 3 perspective, I'm not going to go into the details. Large organization, global awards, all the great things you'd want to hear about a partner who can help you deliver Cisco solutions. But even if we did everything perfectly from a Cisco perspective, designed, deployed, adopted, there's a lot more you can do with Cisco technology that you don't understand because you may not have the skills to do it today. Today, what we're going to do is show you how to jump that chasm, how to bridge where you are today, and jump all the way over the skills you need to actually develop by using AI tools to build the technology as opposed to building it yourself and thinking differently around what it is that you're doing. So what is vibe coding? I think the best definition we could come up with was very much the practice of using AI and AI agents to accelerate the software development by staying in, I love this, by working in rhythm with the machine. It's about the vibe. It's about staying focused on the flow of the creative process, about being a builder. It's not about actually configuring, it's not about developing, it's actually about you focusing on the outcomes you want and using the AI tool sets to get you there. You stay focused on the outcomes, not on how you get there. You use the tools to take you there as opposed to you having to do everything yourself. We have to think differently. Technology's moving far too fast. We don't have all the skills that we need all the time. We need to take a different approach. But there's a whole bunch of common misconceptions around vibe coding. It can be you have to be a coder because it's got the word coding in it. No, that's wrong. It can be low quality code. If AI is generating the code, is it low quality? No, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. Is it insecure? Is AI actually creating secure code, or really, do we still need humans to review it? Well, if you don't validate the code, you don't validate your process, then yes, it will be insecure, but you can use a vibe coding approach to validate the work that you're doing. And finally, is it generic? If we're all just using the same AI tool sets, are we all going to get the same results? Vibe coding does not give you a generic response. Not everybody is going to get the same output, even if they're using the same tool sets. Because the key to this is actually frameworks. Frameworks and building frameworks, and Chris is going to show you, and I'll introduce him in 1 second, I promise I'll get off the stage. Chris is going to show you what a framework is and how you use a framework to provide consistency and guardrails for AI toolsets to give you the outcomes that you want. And there's just a process. My last slide, I believe. You understand your business. You understand what you want. You understand the natural language inputs. You can describe what it is in English in terms of what you want to achieve. Connect that through to the actual agentic processes. So whether it be ChatGPT, whether it be Claude, Splunk AI, Cisco's AI Canvas, and then the framework that will show you how to think and how to develop, and the outputs that you get are very much the reusable code, automation, and dashboards. So today we want to really showcase this really quickly. This is a 90-minute presentation compressed into 20. So at the end of it, happy to take questions, go for a walk, we'll continue this and really explore. But for now, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to pass across to Chris Day to introduce himself. Thank you, sir. Good luck.
Thank you. All right, everyone. My name is Chris Day. I'm the Principal Consultant at Data 3. A little bit of information about myself. The most important thing to take out of this is 14 years at Data 3. Excellent company to work at. But what we need to do is we need to jump into the demos that you're going to see today. Now, if you're sitting in the back, it's going to be very, very hard to see these. It's just the way the screen is. This is all recorded, so please, if you can't see it, rewatch the recording. The demos we're going to see today is a bit on planning, so how to develop our framework, how to collect data using vibe coding, and then we're going to go into presenting that data using Splunk SPL. So to set up what we're about to do is we're going to take data from 3 different data sets. We have the Meraki dashboard with our IoT devices, the Catalyst Center with all of our network devices, and we got ICE providing the authorization, authentication onto our network. We want to bring all that into Splunk. And then when we bring it into Splunk, what we want to do is we want to present it in a unified dashboard. I don't want to log into 3 different places to tell the story of my network. What I want to do is I want to utilize Splunk to get that view. So before we start doing this in coding, we really want to develop a framework with our AI. And that framework is really my project plan. How do I want to get from point A to point B? And then within that framework, I want to put up guardrails. I want to tell my AI that this is the way we're going to do it. And I think of this as my in scope and out of scope of my project plan when I work with AI. Now we want to go ahead and jump into the first demo. And this is building out our framework. One of the two things to take away from this is when you're using a web-based AI, there is project folders. Utilize those project folders. This is a place that we can go ahead and put items such as documentation in. And as we develop context around that project, all the contexts have access to this folder. So you're going to see that here in a little bit. But we go ahead and we create our folder. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start to establish our framework. So when I establish my framework, there's three things I want to talk to the AI about. One's an overview. What am I trying to accomplish? I'm trying to create a Splunk dashboard, ingesting data from 3 different sources, and I want to present it in a way that I can use it. The next thing I want to do is I want to tell how do I want to get from point A to point B. I'm going to build my indexes in Splunk. And then I'm also going to have collectors go out and collect the data for me. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to establish my guardrails. Now, part of that guardrail is before we start coding, I need you to come back to me with the framework so that we can agree upon the framework. So when I submit that to the AI, in this case it's ChatGPT, it's going to come back and it's going to produce the first guardrail, which is we are going to agree on a framework. Now what it's doing is giving me back the framework that I've asked for. So I've asked for it to tell me how are we going to build the collectors. What's the dashboard going to look like? I want a wireframe. So what you're seeing in here is it's producing a wireframe, and it's giving me, is this what we agreed on? Now, you need to read the framework that you have agreed upon with the AI because it's based off your prompt. It may be right, it may not be right. In this case, it wasn't right. So I'm telling it, when you collect this data, I need the Meraki data to go into this specific folder. I need the Catalyst Center data to go into this specific folder because I'm going to build these indexes to put the data inside. So I put that in, and I ask AI to go ahead and validate that. And what the AI is going to do is come back with basically our project plan. I'll give this a read, and if we're all good, we now have our framework, and I can start to develop my code off the framework. If you don't have framework, your AI is going to go a bit rogue. So as boring as this part might be, it's very important. So the next thing we want to do, since we have our framework established, is we need to go into Splunk, we need to do some configuration. So we're going to go ahead and configure some ingest, and then we're also going to configure the indexes of where that data is going to go. Now part of that's going to be building my collectors for Meraki and for Catalyst Center. So jumping into this demonstration, what I'm doing is I'm going into Splunk and I'm creating indexes. What indexes do is it's a place to store event data. Now I want to store the event data based off of the events I'm receiving because it's going to make it more efficient to search inside of Splunk. If I put all my data into a single index, then it's not going to be very efficient to search on. So in here what I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm saying I have syslog traffic coming in, and for this demo, I want to bind this syslog traffic to an ICE index. So what you see me doing here is I'm going through and I'm establishing that I have an ICE index, and any syslog data that comes in, this is where I want to put it. The next thing I'm going to do is I've created a folder structure within Splunk, and my collectors are going to dump the data into that folder structure. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying all the data that goes into the Catalyst Center folder, I want to ingest that into the Catalyst Center index. And then we're going to do the same thing for Meraki. I have my Splunk server. We're going to go in, we're going to find the directory where our Meraki data is to go with my collector. And I'm telling Splunk, if you see any data come in here, ingest it into the Meraki index. This is just going to make it really nice and fast to search for my data. So now that we have that established, I need to tell my AI how to collect this data. So for those of you who've used the Catalyst Center's got the developer toolkit, and in there is all the API documentation. What I've found is I've found an endpoint within my API documentation for device health. And when you go and take a look at this file, you'll see up in the corner there is a download for a Swagger file. What a Swagger file does is it tells us exactly how to use the API, what's required, what's not required. And so what I want to do is I want to download that Swagger file from the Catalyst Center. I want to put it into my project folder. So putting it into the project folder, the AI will now know how to use it. The other thing I want to do, The other thing I want to do, I think it came up a bit too fast, is I want to go to my Meraki dashboard and I want to get the endpoint for my temperature sensors. And well, actually all my sensors. So this API endpoint is going to give me all the information for my sensors. So now what I can do is I can tell my AI about the Swagger files. So I say within the project folder, we have our Swagger files to tell you how to do the API calls. And then also here's the endpoint to the Meraki dashboard that I want. Can you generate me code to do a Python call for this based off the framework? So what the AI has done is it's produced me Python code. This is my collector. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to my Splunk server, put that Python code on the Splunk server, and we're going to go ahead and run the Meraki one. And then I'm going to check that log file, because this is part of the guardrails, is that data goes into the Meraki folder. And when I take a look at it, I have data. I'm going to do the same thing for the Catalyst Center. I asked it to build me a script to go get Catalyst Center data, and now I'm checking, do we have Catalyst Center data? So now I can see that I have health data. And then to finish this demo up, the last thing I'm going to do, jump into Splunk. I'm going to search my index and see that I actually have data in the index, that my index collection is working. So that's great, we got our collectors working, we're collecting data and Splunk's getting that data, but what we need to do is we need to present that data and make it tangible for us. So the way we're going to do that is generating SPL. Now what I'm going to do is first we're going to build a table of users, the authentication or authorization profiles that they've received, what protocol did they use, Radius or TACACS, and what's the count of that. So I'm going into Splunk and I'm searching on all this data, and what I'm finding out is my users and my authorization profiles are in two different events. That's very hard to put SPL data to bind two events together. So bring in Claude Code. What's great about Claude Code is this is AI that I can install directly into the Linux terminal, and because my Splunk is running on Linux, I've installed Claude Code onto it. And Claude Code has something special where it can integrate directly with that operating system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch Claude Code on my Linux box. And the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create agents, or what's known as sub-agents. What an agent can do for me is it can offload some of the processes from my main context. So I can get way more out of my AI with sub-agents. And what you see me doing here is I'm creating two sub-agents. The first sub-agent I'm creating is what's known as, well, I call it a Splunk sampler agent. This agent, what I told it, your job is to go get samples of Splunk data for me. And then I want you, Claude, to generate SPL so I can go and visualize this data. But if I have Claude give me the data and I go put that into Splunk, it's not going to be perfect every time. So what I've also done is I've said, there's an agent I want you to use called the SPL validator. So when you generate SPL code, you use this agent to go and validate it. And what that does is that stops me from having to validate the code. So I'm telling Claude exactly what I want. I want this table of authentications, users, are they successful, are they not? And what you see in here is Claude's gone and said, I used the Splunk sampler, I grabbed some samples, and I found a way to correlate the events together. And since it's found a way to correlate the events together, it has produced some SPL to get me what I want. Now what it's doing is it's using the SPL validator to go and validate that code. And what you don't see in here is it probably took about 20 tries before it was actually able to get me usable code. Now, once it got me a usable SPL, it shows me an example of what it's going to be. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to copy that SPL, jump over to Splunk. I'm going to put the query in the Splunk, and it's going to produce the exact table that I want. So now I have my users, the authorization profiles they're getting, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that to a dashboard, and we'll call this dashboard Cisco Live AI Dashboard by Chris. And then what I want to do is save it to Dashboard Studio. And if you want to know anything about Dashboard Studio, come see me, I love it. And now I have my table. What's great about this table is instead of me watching logs from ICE, I can look at this table and say, I got someone who's been failing off to TACACS over 200 and something times. I need to investigate this. So something that's hard to understand that you have a problem with without Splunk. So now that we've done that, and I'm happy with it, I want to have a visualization and a pie chart of my TACACS versus radius authentications on my network. It's important to me to see that we have a breakdown of that. So I've told Splunk, I've told Claude that I want to break down of this data in a pie chart. It's given me some SPL. I'm going to go in and run that, and I'm going to use Splunk to visualize that as a pie chart. So I'm telling Splunk, visualize this as a pie chart, and since it's the data that I want, I'm going to go ahead and save it to our existing dashboard. So now when I return to the dashboard, I'll have our table, and I'll also have our pie chart of exactly what I want. So what's good about this so far is we've created something reusable. We have a reusable process. So I can keep going into Claude and asking Claude to produce me some queries that I can go and visualize. So what I want to do, I want to visualize all the radius authorization profiles that are being used within my network. I want to visualize all the TACACS profiles that are being utilized in my network. The other thing I want to do is I have a server room full of rack doors, and I have the Meraki MT20 rack sensor on it, and I want to be able to visualize if my rack doors are open or closed. So if my door is open, that's a security issue, make it red. If my door is closed, that's what I want, it's my rack, make it green. So we're able to use that SPL code to visualize data. The next thing I want to do is we have the Meraki MT10 sensor in there, which gives us temperature and humidity. So I'm going to go ahead and tell Claude that I want to get a visualization of this data in Celsius. So that's a guardrail. I want to see this in Celsius. So I'm going to go to Splunk with that query. I'm going to tell Splunk I want to visualize this in a gauge. So when I save this gauge to my dashboard, I now have something that I can look at, and I can modify this to say 20 degrees Celsius is good, 30 degrees Celsius is a bit warm, and I'm getting into the danger zone. So I'm able to visualize my temperature. I don't just have a number, I have something that visually represents my data. This is all good, but there's a problem here. This has taken a long time. This is not the essence of vibe coding. There's got to be a better way to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and ask Claude, is there a better way that we can do this? Because this has taken a long time. Claude's come back to me and said, we could put an MCP server in. We could do a Splunk MCP server. I never heard of a Splunk MCP server. Does one exist? Can we create it? So I'm going to ask Claude, can we create an MCP server? Because you're telling me in here that we're going to have more reusable, less errors, you're going to have direct API. And Claude goes ahead and it builds for us in real time an MCP server on our Splunk Enterprise server. Once it builds that MCP server, it's going to go in, it's going to do a test to tell me how optimized is our code now with MCP. And if you take a look, it's saying up here that after testing, I found this to be 10 times faster than what we were doing. So I'm gaining 10 times the efficiency. So I'm going to tell Claude, great, let's build a dashboard. Let's call it Cisco Live 2025, Claude's Amazing Dashboard. I want you to create me a dashboard with my security information on it, with the device health on it, and I want to see a dashboard of all my environment stuff on it. Now, the other thing, if you look up at the top, what I told Claude to do is I said, I want to optimize this even further. Can you, on the fly, create some sub-AI agents to run the task for us? And what Claude has done is it's created its own agents to build the ICE component of the dashboard, to build the Catalyst Center component of the dashboard, and to build the Meraki component of the dashboard. Now what's amazing about this is I just made my code 10 times more efficient. When it added these agents, we just went to 30 times efficiency. So I went from a dashboard that would have taken me 10 minutes with just using Claude to less than 5 minutes by having it auto-create sub-agents. So I told Claude, go ahead and do it. Generates the dashboard. I'm going to log into Splunk, and here you go. Cisco Live 2025, Claude's amazing dashboard. Now, the thing about this is I have all the tabs I've asked for. I have the data that I want to present it to me that means something to me, and I didn't write a single bit of Python code. I didn't write a single bit of SPL code. What I did was I gave Claude context on what I wanted. And ladies and gentlemen, that is vibe coding. And I'll hand it over to Graham.
Thank you, Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you'll agree that what you've actually seen is the fact that languages like Python give us the ability to extract data exceptionally well out of Cisco environments, but we don't always have the skills. Languages like SPL give us the ability to map, graph, visualize incredible pieces of data within Splunk, but we don't always have the skills. But what we can do is we can master the tools that bridge those gaps for us. So this is really just a snapshot of what's possible. This is this dashboard. Chris created a dashboard manually in about sort of like 7 or 8 hours, which was nowhere near as good as the one that Claude created in a matter of minutes. So the reality is there is so much you can do by mastering tools as opposed to mastering the technology. The difference is a change of mindset. And what we wanted to bring to you today was just that change of mindset and what is possible here, because we know that there's far more value that you can get out of the Cisco portfolio and that you can get out of the Splunk portfolio that you can ever dream of. But these tool sets help you unlock that value. So thank you very much. We're going to walk back towards the Data 3 booth. We're here for a few minutes, have a conversation, but we would love to carry on the conversation if anybody wants more details. As I said, this is a 90-minute presentation delivered in 20. So have a great day. Enjoy the rest of Cisco Live.